Let my people go, he said again. Staff to a serpent, river red like pain. Frogs in the ovens, dust turned to flies. Still Pharaoh's heart kept turning to ice.
It's midnight. You're standing in a small room with your family. Your sandals are on, cloak is belted, and your walking staff is in your hand. And on the table, a roasted lamb. There's flatbread with no yeast and bitter herbs. And on the doorframe, there's blood. It's still wet, because you painted it yourself an hour ago with a branch of hyssop. And outside, you can hear something moving through the streets, but you don't dare look. Your children are pressed against you, and your spouse is praying. And somewhere in the distance, a cry rises from Pharaoh's palace. This is the night that the world changed. So welcome to Come Listen With Me. I'm Ricky Black, aka Elder Eliezer, and today is the day we've been building towards all week in our ongoing scripture study. So day 4, Exodus, chapter 11, verses 1 through 10, and then chapters 12, verses 1 through 42. It's going to be 52 verses in total we're going to cover today. And it's a lot, but it's important because this is the Passover. And the Passover is probably the theological center of the entire book of Exodus. Some scholars would say it's the theological center of the entire Old Testament. Why? Because everything, every symbol, every instruction, every detail, it points to one single person. And that's Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God. And we're going to read every verse together today. And I want to take it slow because every detail here we're about to cover really, truly matters. It's important. So we're going to begin by opening our scriptures. But before we do, we want to read with intention. So a couple of questions to keep in mind as we go through so we can be intent and present with what we're reading. First is, what does each Passover instruction teach us about Jesus Christ, right? So as we read, ask why each detail matters. The lamb without blemish, the blood on the doorpost, the unleavened bread, the bitter herbs, eating in haste, staying in the house. Like, watch for, what you can see about what each one is teaching about Christ, his sacrifice, and how deliverance works. And then, what actually separates the protected house from the destroyed house? So as we read, look closely, like what makes the difference? Is it ancestry alone, moral superiority, social status, or something else? Like what role does faith, obedience, and the applied blood actually play? Okay, and with that in mind, let's jump right into our scriptures. So today, we're going to begin again in chapter 11 here, and we're going to be starting with verses 1 through 3. It says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Yet will I bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go hence. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out hence altogether. Speak now in the ears of the people, and let every man borrow of his neighbor, and every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people." So one more plague, right? But this is going to be the last one. And God says when it's over, Pharaoh won't just let them go. He'll thrust them out. He'll force them to leave. If you notice in verse 2, God tells the Israelites to ask their Egyptian neighbors for silver and gold. Now, the word borrow in the King James Version, it's a little misleading, right? It's the Hebrew she'al, right, which means to ask. So they're not borrowing, they're collecting, right? And this fulfills the promise that God made to Abraham back in Genesis 15:14, that the nation which enslaved his descendants would send them out with great substance. So after 400 years of unpaid labor, Israel is collecting what they're owed. And then verse 3 tells us something very important, right? Moses was very great in the land of Egypt. After 9 plagues, the Egyptians respected Moses, even if the Pharaoh didn't. So his reputation had grown with every plague. The man Pharaoh threatened to kill was now more honored in Egypt than the Pharaoh himself. All right, so let's continue on to verses 4 through 7. "And Moses said, Thus saith the Lord, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt. And all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it to any more. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue, against man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. So about midnight, right? God names the hour. This is coming at the darkest point of the night. Every firstborn, top to bottom, palace to prison, the firstborn of Pharaoh on his throne, the firstborn of the maidservant grinding grain behind a mill, even the firstborn of animals, right? So no household and no beast is exempt. No rank can help provide shelter. So, but why the firstborn, right? That's because in the ancient world, the firstborn represented the family's future, its strength and its inheritance, its hope. To lose the firstborn was to lose everything that you were counting on. And here's the Christological layer to this that runs beneath all of it. Jesus is the firstborn of the Father. See, in Doctrine and Covenants 93, verse 21, it tells us that he was in the beginning with the Father, the firstborn. In the eternal Passover, it's God's own firstborn who will die, not to punish, but to save. And the death of Egypt's firstborn foreshadows the willing sacrifice of God's firstborn for all of humanity. In verse 7, the divine distinction, one more time, was, but against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue. Not a dog will bark at them, right? Just complete peace on one side of the line, while there's total devastation on the other. And the difference is not merit. It's not whether Israel is better. Is that they trusted God enough to do what he asked. All right, so let's go ahead and continue verses 8 through 10. And all these thy servants shall come down unto me, and bow down themselves unto me, saying, Get thee out, all the people that follow thee, and after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in a great anger. And the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. And Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, so that he would not let the children of Israel go out of the land. So Moses tells Pharaoh, your own servants will come bowing to me, begging us to leave. And then Moses walks out in great anger, right? This is one of the few times that Scripture records that Moses was angry. He's angry at all the needless suffering that Pharaoh's stubbornness has caused. And then verse 10, well, it gives us the summary, right? It says that Moses and Aaron did all these wonders. Now, the JST, right, continues to tell us that Pharaoh was hardening his own heart. The stage is now set for the final act. All right. So now God gives the instructions for Passover, and every single instruction is loaded with meaning, right? So we're going to read very carefully through this as we pick up now in the next chapter. We're going to go into verses 1 and 2, chapter 12 here. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So the beginning of months, right? What is he trying to say there? So God tells them to reset their calendars. This month, the month of the Passover, later called Nisan or Abib, it becomes the first month. So everything before this is the old world, and everything after is the new. So deliverance through the Lamb marks the starting point of everything. So think about your own life, right? When did your real beginning happen? Now, for many of us, it wasn't our birthday. It's the day that we truly encountered Christ. It was the day that the blood was applied, and that's when the calendar truly restarted. All right, let's continue on in verses 3 through 5. Speak ye unto all the congregations of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbors next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make you your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. All right. So a lamb for each house, without blemish, a male of the first year. So they take the lamb on the 10th day and keep it until the 14th. And it's 4 days living with this animal, right? Getting to know it, letting the children feed it, maybe even name it. And so that's when it's slaughtered, right? The cost is actually felt. The sacrifice is not supposed to be painless. If it doesn't cost you something, it's not really a sacrifice. And now without blemish, right? No defect, no injury, no imperfection. So 1 Peter 1:19, it makes the connection very explicit here, right? Redeemed by the precious blood of Christ as a lamb without blemish and without spot. So Jesus was the lamb without sins, the spotless offering. And notice, if the household is too small for a whole lamb, they share with their neighbors, right? So Passover is also communal. Salvation was never meant to really be experienced alone. You share the lamb with those around you. All right. So continuing on here into verse 6. And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. So the whole assembly kills the lamb in the evening. So every family, they're going to do it simultaneously at the same hour, right? There's a sort of corporate dimension to this whole act. All of Israel participates in the sacrifice at once. It wasn't like some celebration where families just figured out when they were going to do it together, right? We're doing ours earlier, we're doing ours later, nope, all at the same time. So when Christ died on the cross, it was for all humanity. One lamb, one sacrifice for the whole congregation of God's children. All right, let's continue on in verse 7 here. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper doorposts of the house wherein they shall eat. So they take the blood and they strike it on the two side posts, right? Left and right, and then across the upper post of the door. Now, some teachers have noticed that if you step back and look at a door marked this way, blood on both sides and across the top, it actually forms the shape of the cross. Now, whether that connection was intended in the original moment or recognized later, it's a typological resonance, right? But it is kind of interesting. Now, the blood isn't for God's information, right? He knows who lives inside, right? The blood is for the family's faith. It's an outward action of an internal trust, right? You're taking the blood and putting it where everybody can see it, including yourself. And it makes a declaration. I believe this blood will save me. And the atonement requires application, right? So Christ's sacrifice is infinite, but it becomes personal only when you apply it to your own doorpost. All right, let's continue on here in verses 8 and 9. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, and with the purtenance thereof. Okay. So roasted with fire, not boiled, not raw. So fire is an instrument of purification throughout Scripture, right? So the lamb passes through fire before it nourishes the family. Now, Christ passed through the fires of Gethsemane and Golgotha before his sacrifice can be made at the feet of the world, right? And unleavened bread. So leaven or yeast, it was a symbol of corruption because it spoils quickly and it spreads through the whole lump. Now, Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians, this is chapter 5, verses 7 through 8, says, "Purge out, therefore, the old leaven. Let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth." So Jesus himself used leaven as a metaphor for hypocrisy and false teachings, even in Matthew 16. See, unleavened bread is bread of purity. It's bread without corruption. And Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." That was in John 6:35. Now, the bitter herbs. These were called the bitterness of bondage in Egypt. Exodus 1:14, if you remember back there, it says the Egyptians made their lives bitter with hard bondage. And Christ, it says he drank the bitter cup. And in 3 Nephi, chapter 11, verse 11, says, "I have drunk out of that bitter cup which the Father hath given me." So he tasted the bitterness of our bondage so we wouldn't have to consume it, to be consumed by it. Okay, so let's move on here to verse 10. And ye shall not let of it remaining until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. Okay. So nothing left over in the morning, right? There's no leftovers. There's no packing it for lunch the next day. The sacrifice is to be completely consumed. And there is a totality to the act, right? Like, you don't take part of the lamb and set it aside for a little later, right? You receive the whole offering at one point in time. So it's just like Christ's atonement, right? It's not a partial remedy. It's not a half cure. It's complete, and we're meant to receive it that way, like completely all at once. We don't receive half our salvation at a time. We receive it all at once. All right, so let's continue on into verse 11. And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. So, loins girded, shoes on, staff in hand, eat in haste. So you eat this meal dressed, ready to leave. This is not a leisurely dinner, right? This is the urgency of departure. You're ready to move the instant that God says, go. Now, Paul, he echoed this in 2 Timothy 2:22. Flee youthful lusts. And Joseph demonstrated when he ran from Potiphar's wife in Genesis 39:12. See, when God opens the door to freedom, you don't hesitate. You don't look back. You move with alacrity. When it's time to leave Egypt, you get up and you leave in all haste. And if you look at the final phrase, it is the Lord's Passover. Not Moses's, not Israel's Passover. It's the Lord's. He owns this ordinance. He designed every element of it. It belongs to him. All right, let's continue on now. Verse 12 and 13. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the house where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. So verse 12, right? Against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. This final plague, it isn't just about Pharaoh. It's a verdict on the entire false Egyptian pantheon. Every plague is targeted a specific god. This one is going to target all of them at once. The 10 plagues, they're basically a divine courtroom, and the 10th plague is the final sentencing. And then verse 13, like that verse, it changes so much. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. That is the atonement in a single sentence. The blood of the lamb stands between the family and the destroyer and death. Not their merit, not their perfection, not their resume, not their good works. Just the blood and nothing else, applied to the doorpost by an act of faith. Now, Mosiah 4:2, it captures the New World echo of this moment, right? The people of King Benjamin fell to the earth and cried, "Oh, have mercy," and apply the atoning blood of Christ that we may receive forgiveness of our sins. So, again, apply the blood. That's the Passover. That's the sacrament. And that's the entirety of the gospel. All right. And let's go ahead and pick up here in verse 14. And this day shall it be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. So a memorial, a feast, an ordinance forever, throughout your generations. It's not a one-time event. This is the establishment of a perpetual covenant practice. God is building remembrance into the rhythm of their lives because he knows how quickly people can forget. All right. So let's go ahead and move on now to verses 15 through 20. This is going to be a little bit of a bigger block here. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread for the first day until the 7th, thou shalt be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, and in the 7th day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. And in the first month, and on the 14th day of the month, at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 1 and the 20th of the month at even. In 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Ye shall not eat nothing leavened. In all your habitations shall ye eat unleavened bread. So 7 days, a week of unleavened bread. No leaven is even allowed in the house at all. And the consequences for breaking this are very severe, right? That soul shall be cut off from Israel. So twice God states this penalty in the 6 verses. So why is he being so strict? It's because remembering isn't optional in a covenant relationship. The moment you treat God's memorial casually is the moment that you start treating God's deliverance casually. And that is the beginning of forgetting, right? Of taking things for granted. Covenants run on memory. And when you forget what God did for you, you begin behaving as if he hadn't done it. Okay, so let's go on to verses 21 through 23. And then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, Draw out and take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop, and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel on the 2 side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out of that door in the house until the morning. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians. And when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the 2 side posts, the Lord will pass over the door, and will not suffer the destroyer to come unto you, unto your houses, to smite you. So hyssop, it's actually a pretty small but common plant. It's nothing exotic. So God didn't require any sort of special instrument per se to apply the blood. He used what was readily at hand. So the application of Christ's atonement, again, it doesn't require wealth, status, or sophistication. It just requires wealth and obedience with whatever you have close at hand. And notice where it says, none of you shall go out of this door, the door of his house, until morning. So once the blood is applied, you have to stay inside. You shelter under its protection. You don't wander back out into the streets where the destroyer is passing. Once you've placed yourself under the blood of the Lamb, you need to stay there. Now, in verse 23, it distinguishes between the Lord and the destroyer. See, the Lord passes through. He sees the blood, and he will not suffer the destroyer to come in. So the blood doesn't just mark the house, it activates God's protection. In D&C 89, verses 18 through 21, it echoes this whole principle. Like, those who keep the covenant will receive health, wisdom, and the promise that the destroying angel shall pass over them. All right, let's go ahead and continue on in verses 24 through 27. And ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass, when ye come to the land which the Lord will give you according as he hath promised, that ye shall keep this service. And it shall come to pass, when your children shall say unto you, What mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses, and the people bowed at the head, and they worshipped. So, what mean ye by this service, right? God planned for the question. He wanted the children to ask. He wanted them to seek out more knowledge. So the entire ritual is actually designed to provoke curiosity in the next generation so that the parents are forced to tell the story. And this is the oldest and most effective form of religious education on earth. It's not the lectures and the talks given from the pulpit. It's not a textbook. It's a meal. It's a ritual, right? And a child's question and a parent's testimony from parent to child. And the answer is precise. It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the house of the children of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. It's who, what, when, why. Now, everything a child needs to understand, yeah, it's right there. That's what God did. Now, the people's response in verse 27, they bowed their heads and worshiped before the plague even falls. That's what they do, right? Before the lamb is slaughtered, before midnight comes, they worship. That is faith. Worshiping before you see deliverance, because you trust the God who promised it. Let's continue on here in verse 28. Oops. And the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. So this is simple obedience. They did as the Lord had commanded. It's no debate. There's no modifications. None of this wishy-washy. Well, I think the blood on the doorposts is more of a metaphor as opposed to a little. Nope, none of that. They just did it exactly as they were instructed, and their obedience saved their firstborn. All right. So let's move on to midnight, the midnight hour, starting in verse 29 here. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And the Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. Midnight. It's the darkest hour. From the palace to the dungeon, not a house in Egypt where there was not one dead. So the scale of this is almost incomprehensible, and it's really meant to be, because the scale of what sin does to individuals, to families, and entire nation is also incomprehensible. When a civilization builds its entire economy on the enslavement of God's children, the reckoning, when it does come, it's going to be total and absolute. And Pharaoh rises, not in the morning, but in the middle of the night. His firstborn is dead. The heir to the throne of Egypt, the next son of Ra, right? The God King's dynasty. It's been shattered at that single hour. Let's continue on in verses 31 through 33. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night, and said, Rise up and get ye forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go, serve the Lord as ye have said. Also take your flocks and your herds as ye have said, and be gone, and bless me also. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people, that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, We be all dead men. So Pharaoh, he's not just permitting them to leave, right? He's urging them, rise up, get out, take everything, just go now. And then a couple words that always, stop me right there, right? And bless me also. So after everything he's done, after all the resistance and the cruelty and the broken promises and the lowest moment with his son body still warm, Pharaoh asked the people that he enslaved to bless him. Now, there's something deeply devastatingly human about that, right? Pride can hold for a long time, but grief, it shatters and breaks everyone open. Now, there in verse 33, like the Egyptians, they were also urgent, right? We will all be dead men. So they feared that if Israel stayed another hour, they would all die, right? That the oppressor is now desperate for the oppressed to leave and just be gone. Okay, so let's continue up there on verse 34. We're going to go to 36 now. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptian jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. So yeah, they left so fast that their bread didn't even have time to rise, right? That unleavened dough wrapped in cloths on their shoulders became the origin story of matzah, right? The unleavened bread that Jewish families eat at Passover to this day. Honestly, I kind of like it. I get it from time to time. But they're still doing it 3,000 years later. And they also collected silver, gold, and clothing from the Egyptians. And that fulfills Genesis 15:14, right? The promise that God made to Abraham 4 centuries earlier that the nation which enslaved his descendants would afterwards send them out with great substance. So 400 years between promise and fulfillment. So God's timeline, yeah, it might be long, but his promise is always going to come through. Okay, so let's continue on verse 37 through 39 here. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men beside children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and the flocks and the herds, and very much cattle. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt, and could not tarry, neither had they prepared for themselves any victual. So that's 600,000 men on foot. That's besides the children. So add women and children, and you're looking at 1.5 to 2 million people easily. And they're just streaming out of Ramesses towards Succoth. And it's a mixed multitude that went out with them, right? Mixed multitude, non-Israelites, so Egyptians perhaps, other enslaved people, people who saw that what God did over these weeks and months, and decided, yeah, I'm going to go with them. I don't fully know their God yet, but I know that he is real, that he has true power and authority, and I want to be on his side of the line. So the covenant, it's always been open, right? From the very beginning, people who weren't born into Israel could join. The gathering of Israel has never been only about bloodline. It's about a choice. It's about covenant. And if you're here watching this video, you've chosen to follow Christ. You're part of the mixed multitude. You're walking out of Egypt along with Israel. Continuing, we're going to go verses 40 through 42 now. And now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day, it came to pass that all the host of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto the Lord for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of the Lord to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. So, 430 years ended in one night by one lamb. The selfsame day, not approximately, not roughly, but the exact day God had appointed. And when the time was fulfilled, the deliverance came at precisely the hour that God determined. This is the night of the Lord. That was the phrase, right? That night. He echoed through Jewish worship over 3,000 years. The Passover, Haggadah, right? The text reader at the Seder table every year says, in every generation, every person is obligated to see themselves as though they personally went out of Egypt. And not their ancestors, them, personally. The Passover is not history. It is all about everyone's identity with the Savior. And that's what Christ does. However long your bondage has lasted, and however many years, however many generations of pain, like his deliverance, it can end it. Not gradually, not after a subtle waiting period, like in a single act of faith applied by a single lamb on a single night that changes everything for you. Well, we read all of Exodus 11 and the first 42 verses of Exodus 12 today, every verse. And the announcement of the 10th plague, the precise symbolic instructions of Passover, the night itself, midnight, the cry, the departure. I don't know where you are tonight, but I don't know what your Egypt looks like. But I know this, there is a lamb and there is blood on the doorpost. And if you trust it, if you apply it to your life, the destroyer will pass over you. And here's my question for the comments. Which symbol from the Passover speaks most powerful to you right now? Like in this season of your life, was it the lamb without blemish, the blood on the doorpost, the unleavened bread, the bitter herbs, eating in haste, the beginning of the months? Throw in the comments. Tell us, share with us, tell each other. That's how we learn, by sharing each other's insight. What may seem obvious to you could be very impactful to others who hadn't seen that just yet. And by seeing what God is showing each of us individually, we can all grow stronger and more knowledgeable in the gospel. Now, tomorrow is going to be day 5, and we're going to ask the most important question that follows the miracle. How do we remember? So the Passover becomes a perpetual ordinance at this point. The firstborn are consecrated. and we'll trace the direct line from the Passover table to the Last Supper to the sacrament tray in your own ward every Sunday. I hope to see you there. Also, Song of the Week, Remember This Day. The link is going to be in the description. Please, by all means, listen to it as you study. It's literally going through everything that we're reading about today. It should help kind of keep it in mind. It's a lot of fun, too. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. So I'll see you back here tomorrow. And as always, I appreciate you all and thank you for choosing to spend some of your precious time to come listen with me.
Hearts like flame with an outstretched arm, he called our name. Remember this day, teach every child. Love passed over and let us out. If the night grows heavy and the road feels long, paint the door red and sing this song. He remembers his covenant, so will we. From Egypt's shadow